class, but an announcement about Opportunity Quest. Played a little video. Raise your hand. So I sent that video to, I'm not in charge of Opportunity Quest, but I helped him produce that video, and I sent it up to the Canvas guy, and he said, we probably shouldn't have an autoplay video, but he did it anyway for us. I said, why is the autoplay a problem? And he said, autoplay is a problem because not all of our students know how to clear announcements. So like in March, every time you get into Canvas, months from now, it's still going to play that announcement, right? Play the video. So raise your hand if it's still playing for you and you don't know how to clear it. We've got a bunch that don't, I know, because I've surveyed a couple other classes. There's a little X in the top right side of that video that you should be able to click to shut that announcement down so it doesn't play every time you go in. I felt really bad when I found out, I surveyed another class this morning, and like a third of them didn't know how to shut it down. It's also helpful to minimize Control and the minus sign on your keyboard will narrow down everything in your browser, because several have told me I can't get to that little X in the top right hand side. So I felt bad that now you have an autoplay video popping up every time you go into Canvas. So that's how to get rid of that. But the announcement is a good announcement, and hopes that you will take the opportunity to enter that Opportunity Quest competition that is coming up. The deadline is October 31st. It's my privilege to introduce today's guest speaker for you. His name is Devin Pitcher. He's an independent app developer. He spent a few years in aerospace after he finished what you're doing when he got out of college. And then he worked for a small software company, and now he develops apps full-time. He's developed for different operating systems, and his company is called Fresh Produce. So if you go to his website, you can see a couple of the mobile apps that he's developed. I was just talking to him and told him, hey, my wife actually has one of the apps you developed on her phone and uses it all the time. And some of you may have that experience as well. He said, is that how you heard of me? And I said, no, that isn't. Somebody else recommended you. Apparently he's more famous than he knew. So he develops for some other companies, and so you might not even know he's the developer if you've purchased through another company. But we appreciate the referral that we received to have him come today, and look forward to hearing from him. He's been featured on Apple's Best New Apps and Best Apps of 2013 Apps category. Devin lives in St. George, Utah with his wife and 4 children. Please welcome Mr. Devin Pitcher.
Okay, thanks, Alan. I'm excited to be here. Great, I've never been to Snow College, never been to Ephraim, and it's beautiful. Had a fun drive up here. So, like Alan said, I'm an independent app developer. What that means basically is I don't work for some company to develop apps. I'm just on my own. Some cases I've partnered with other people to develop apps. Some of them are just my own ideas. And sometimes those work out, sometimes they don't. Usually it works better when I'm working with someone else that has some talents that complement mine. So a little about me. I grew up in Cache Valley, Logan area. Went to Utah State, graduated in computer engineering. I never, at the time, thought about being a business owner. I still really don't think of myself as an entrepreneur, but you know, maybe I am. I have a wife. My wife's from St. George. We have 4 kids. The oldest one's 17, so life's a little bit crazy right now. Youngest one's 9. But we have this quote up here from the wise philosopher LLJ. Do what you love, you'll be better at it. It sounds pretty simple, but you'd be surprised how many people don't get this one right away. You know, that's kind of one of my maybe one of my themes here today is, for me, success isn't necessarily making money. If you can find something, do what you love. You can do that for a living, and you're happy. Money's great too. Money makes it easier. But I think just being happy, whatever makes you happy. If being happy is working along with people you like, then that's success. If it's having some freedom to do things you want, then that's a great reason to own your own business, I think, too. So I think do what you love and find a way to make that work. It's not quite as simple as just do what you love. I think you got to be smart about it too, and find a way to make it work. Let me grab this clicker. So, kind of, hope to kind of share my story about how I got from where I was to where I am today. Which, I don't really, where I am today, I don't consider that the end of the story. I'm kind of still in the middle of it, still fighting, trying to get to where I want to be. But we'll get there, I guess. 2001, 9/11 happened. I was in college at the time. Like I said, I graduated Utah State. 9/11 affected me in a few ways. So those of you who remember the time probably remember that the economy was kind of tanking right afterwards. And I graduated in 2003. So at the time, most of the guys I was with and girls were having a hard time finding a job. I was actually real fortunate because I had a job I had in college. I had gotten a security clearance. And because of 9/11, that was really hard to come by at the time. There were a lot of companies, Department of Defense, and just companies that you needed a government security clearance to get in. So unlike my colleagues, I was getting all sorts of interviews and job offers. It was actually kind of an exciting time. But I feel bad for the other students who were they were just deciding to go on to stay in school and go on to get a master's. So I ended up taking a job in Boulder, Colorado, doing like Alan said, I was in aerospace. I was writing software for a ground station that communicated with satellites, and it was, I thought it was pretty exciting, or I thought it was going to be real exciting, and it was in some cases. A lot of times it was just kind of boring, but I mean it was a good job. A couple of things started to kind of bothered me a little. It was a big company, and I was kind of learned quick that there's a lot of politics involved in big companies, and I didn't always feel like promotions and stuff that happened were based on what you did and merit. So that was grinding on me a little. Also, I had I should say, where I am today is really, for the most part, it's not due to things I've done so much, but a lot of just people in my life. I've had a lot of help and leaned on a lot of people, and so I'm going to talk about some of them today. But I had an office mate at this job. His name was John Kelly, and he was a cool guy. But one thing about John is he owned his own business on the side. He had a consulting business on the side, and he was actually only there to, as far as I know, he was there to get a government clearance so that he could win his own contract. And I just looked at him, and it always seemed like he was kind of a little bit more carefree because he had other stuff going on, and he didn't have to rely much on the man. So I kind of got it in my head back then that, yeah, it'd be cool someday if I could own my own business. Eventually, I ended up leaving that company, go work for a small software company in St. George. And they were a real, they were a fun company. You know, it was a fun contrast to go from this big business where there's all these processes you got to follow to just kind of a small business where you're kind of just doing whatever it takes. That kind of felt better to me. But at the same time, you know, there was kind of more of the same stuff where I wasn't always doing the stuff that I wanted to do, the stuff that interested me, or I wasn't doing it the way that I would have liked to do it. And so I still had this back in my head that I need to find some way, I need to find something that I can do, something that I can start on the side, get something growing, because I don't want to be dependent. I don't want to be dependent on these people, these employees forever. I'd like to have a little more freedom, I guess. So, come to this quote: "I must create a system or be enslaved by another man." This was a quote I actually found in the biography of Walt Disney. That's an awesome biography. If you ever get a chance to read it, extremely inspirational entrepreneur. But this describes him, I think, perfectly, and it's something I was kind of feeling at the time, that I want to be in control of my own destiny. But you know, at the same time, I was struggling to find anything, find a way that I could venture off on my own. You know, I'm just one guy. I don't know a lot of stuff. I don't know business stuff. Don't know accounting, right? I didn't necessarily have any great ideas. Then in 2007, something happened. So I don't know if any of you have ever watched the unveiling of the iPhone, Steve Jobs' little video. But it was kind of an exciting time. So people knew that Apple was going to come out with a phone, but they didn't know much about it really. Many of you probably remember back then we had like the Nokia phones and the Razors, like Motorola flip phones, and like Palm Pilots. They had the stylus, and there was some touchscreen stuff, but none of the multi-touch and the touch it with your fingers, interact with it directly that way. So Apple came along, and it's kind of famous now, his introduction, but he's talking about, okay, this is an iPod, phone, internet communication device, whatever that means. And he's like, and then he repeats it, he's like, no, this is it's a phone, iPod, and an internet communication device. He kind of made it sound like these were three different products they were rolling out. And then he says, and they're all together in one device. And then the audience, there was kind of Apple nerds, started going crazy, and they didn't even know what they were cheering about. I don't think Steve Jobs even understood at the time what he was introducing into the world. But he definitely changed the world on this. At the time, I didn't follow Apple. Didn't know anything about it at the time. It took probably another year and a half before I even saw an iPhone. But when I first saw a couple of guys who were big Apple fans brought an iPod Touch into work. I just remember that day because first time I saw one and I tried it and I was like, my mind was so blown. I'm like, you do so many things with this. And the other part about it was App Store, because I told you I had these dreams of doing my own thing, but one doubt I always had is, how am I going to sell this? Even if I can make a product that people want, how am I going to sell it? And so, they even sell it for you. They have this app store. You just put it in there and they sell you for it. I mean, they take 30%, which is pretty brutal, but good trade-off for me at the time. I'm like, take it. I just want someone to sell this. I want people to be able to see it somewhere. The other part is, how do people find it? Still, I mean, the App Store is kind of can't really find. I mean, you're still hidden in the App Store, but at the time I was excited. So I made up my mind that I'm going to make an app. I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm going to make an app, get rich, whatever. So what I went out, I bought an iPod Touch. I had to have one. I gave it to my wife. That's how you buy a device, a gift. My real intent was to use that to develop on. I also had to have a Mac. You have to develop iPhone apps on a Mac. So I convinced her, if we buy, I bought one of those Mac Minis. It was like $700. Convinced her, if we buy this, it's going to pay off. I mean, that's go crazy. So I went out, bought a Mac Mini, and I started learning how to program on the iPhone. And I was super busy at this place gone, but that company. So it's a struggle. It was hard to find the time to focus on this thing that I wanted to do. But I just kind of, any extra time I could find, I was studying the documentation, doing little tutorial apps and stuff. We would, time I was donating plasma, 2 weeks or something, I don't know, I don't remember, but I would load up this iPod Touch with documentation and I would just read it while I'm donating plasma. So it was exciting. I was finally doing something that was mine. And at the same time, I have a brother who's an artist and an animator. So we were kind of bouncing ideas off each other too. We figure this is a good match. I'm a developer and an artist, so we should combine our talents. And that's where I have a company called Fresh Produce. I don't sell fruit or veg. It's always hard to explain that to people. I don't really have a good answer. Just me and my brother. That's what we came up with, and it's been that way ever since. So we came up with this idea for an app where you keep track of your Monopoly money. So you're playing Monopoly or the Game of Life or whatever game that uses play money. We thought, okay, just keep track of it on the phone. You don't have to use the paper. And this was going to be a huge thing, right? So I mean, I was working on that in all my spare time. I actually had a surgery, and so I was all excited because I'd get a few days off and I could sit and work on this app after the surgery. So eventually, it took about I don't even remember, 6 to 8 months. Finally got this thing done, and I mean, it was a triumph because back then there was not a lot of documentations, and the iOS documentation. iOS was pretty buggy. I was just always finding workarounds to get stuff to work. Eventually, we got done. This is what it was. King Play Money Bank. So we released it, and nobody downloaded it. We had, I was making maybe a few dollars a day or a few dollars every other day. So that was a little discouraging, right? Didn't conquer the world yet, but there's a quote from Thomas Edison: "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways it won't work." I'm sure in all your, all these speeches from entrepreneurs, they talk about failure. Really, a lot of times you failures and you learn successes. So I tried to, it was disappointing, but I wasn't, tried to move on and learn. So my brother and I, we started bouncing other ideas back and forth. There was an app out at the time. It's called, I think it's still around. It's called Talking Tom. Like a cat, you poke it and it says things and does funny things. So we're going to do a Talking Tom. We kind of wanted to make an app for kids. So we decided we're going to make this app. My brother came up with this little monster. You poke him and he says "mommy," and then there's other. He had some other characters to come in and like change them, shoot them with lasers and change his colors. So this was the next project. How it turned out. So this app, I guess one of the things with this app is I wanted to get a little more into game development. So I learned I used a game engine. So I guess one of the things I learned from this app. Move on. So long story short, this wasn't a success either. It was probably even less of a success. And I had learned from the first one, it had been a paid app. And there's different business models in the App Store. You can do paid, you can do free with ads, in-app purchases, subscriptions. So I hadn't had much success with the paid app. I said I want to try free. Because who's not going to take something that's free, right? Of course, that's kind of naive. We know today. Pay people take. So this was also disappointing. But at this point, it's time to sit down and figure out what I'm doing wrong. So one of the things I thought I was doing wrong is these ideas we had, they're long shots. We thought they were great, but at the end of the day, there's so many apps, it's kind of a crapshoot. Even if you've got a great idea, it's a lot of work to just gamble that it's going to somehow go viral or take. So I knew this wasn't a good strategy to base a business on. And then I mentioned that I used a game engine to make that app. It was kind of something I just really interested in learning. Not necessarily a great business decision. And to be clear, not a bad. I don't think it is a bad idea. Start a project just because you want to learn the thing. I've actually that game engine stuff. I ended up using it later down the road in another app. Did better. But you should probably base your decisions on something more solid, something that you've researched. So, I settled on a new approach. One thing, like I said, that those apps were just kind of a shot in the dark. So I started studying the App Store just constantly. I was always looking at the rankings of the apps, which apps are doing well, in which categories. I wanted to find some niche I could get into doing well, or something that's not covered well. I was crazy about those App Store rankings. I'm like, I'm a little bit competitive by nature, and I just wanted to get in there and beat some of these rankings. So I kind of had goals of, to me, getting an app in those rankings was I don't know what the word is, but I guess good for my ego. But I felt like if I got in there, if I had an app in the top rankings, I could be, means I'm a great developer. So I was studying the App Store, designed for a target audience. I kind of gave up on games. There's so many games in the App Store. It's so hard to be seen. There's great games out there that nobody knows about, just because there's so many. And I started focusing on photo and video because I saw that it's a popular category. I think it's second most popular to games, and there wasn't near as much out there at the time. Photo and video apps. And also, I noticed that my wife purchased a lot more apps than I did. So I thought maybe I should aim towards women. And you'll see that's what I did. Marketing strategy. I needed to do more than just put it out there and see what happens. Didn't necessarily have a marketing strategy at the time, but you'll see that it kind of developed over time. And what's my unfair advantage? What could I do better than some of these other guys, some of these other apps? Back then there were a lot of bad apps. Today you've got big companies making a lot of these apps. Back there was just guys in their basement. It still is somewhat, but you got to be a lot more polished now than you did back then. And what I thought my unfair advantage was just kind of more. I saw some of these apps and I'm like, I can do better than that. Whether it's right or wrong, I think I could make a better quality app, had more attention to detail, and could just better. Great unfair advantage, but that was what I was aiming for. Do it better. Execution is more important than an idea. This kind of goes along with what I was saying about making a better product. By then, the App Store had been out for a couple years, and kind of the gold rush. Initially, with the App Store, there was kind of a gold rush where you hear these stories of people, guys were making hundreds of thousands of dollars from this app they threw together. And I had people, when people found out I was developing apps, they'd come up to me all the time and, I've got this great app idea. We're doing 50-50. I've got the idea, you do the work. A lot of work. But so, ideas are important, but I think the execution of the idea, making it work, how you make it work, making it an enjoyable experience for the user, they want to open it up and play with it all the time, is better than just the idea. Okay, so next app. So all this time I'm kind of brainstorming. Like I said, I'm studying the App Store. Looking for my next thing. I don't know how true this is, but it seems true to me. What if startup ideas come to entrepreneurs while on vacation? It's true for me. I find that whenever when I go on vacation, or even if I just go for a run, whenever I can get out of my tunnel vision, get so locked into my work, what I'm doing, most of my ideas come when I get out of that and I kind of look and see the big picture of what's going on. So around this time, I think my wife and I. My wife's not in. Like I went on a vacation by myself, but I think you'll see her later on. Went on this vacation to Washington D.C. At the time, it was really. At the time, we had just discovered Instagram, icon, and back when it was a new thing. So we were totally into that, putting these crappy filters on our pictures, and like, yeah, this is awesome. This is how we're gonna share our pictures with our kids at home, and so that's what we were having fun with that. And we started getting into some of the apps that editing apps and apps for editing before you shared it Instagram. And she had this app called BubbleFrame, which is a collage app. Add 4 or 5 different pictures, drag them into a pockets, and then save it, and you can collage on Instagram. And she showed me this app, and I'm like, oh, I could do that. It doesn't even look hard. And then we get looking some more, and we're like, well, is anyone else doing this? There's already like 20 copycat apps. We're like, well, I don't want to just be a copy. Something we could do different, or something better. So I had this idea. Okay, we're going to do a collage app, but all the frames are circled. So that's what, like, right that night in the hotel, I started playing around. Okay, how do I crop a photo to circle, and getting excited about this idea. So eventually, after kind of the same story, where I'm doing this all on the side, and whenever I find the time, still working at that company. Eventually, we came out with this app called BubbleFrame, and my wife is going crazy with this. She's really good. I mean, she's the social one among us. She's posting all the time. She's telling everyone about it. She had an online crochet business, so she would go to these conferences, talk to all these blogger women, and so she would get them to post about it. So they posted something on Instagram with the app, hashtag BubbleFrame, and it was super cool, super exciting. First, we actually started seeing some success with this app, mostly because of my wife. It was just exciting because you'd get some blogger that has 10,000 followers. He posts a BubbleFrame photo, post it, and then we're watching the App Store ranks moving up, photo, video, top paid. I think we got as high as 30-something, which, I mean, that's something. That was something. We were fun. And, another thing came from this as well, though, is connections. My wife and I started making connections with some of these bloggers. I said before I needed a way to marketing. This was working. Right? We were working with these bloggers. They share with their followers, and had something that was kind of picking up. I mean, still, this wasn't near enough to start a business or to leave my job, but exciting. My wife would do a lot of promoting for this. She did a lot of work with it. Okay, imagination is more important than knowledge, from Albert Einstein. So, put this quote in there. I just love the quote. I think it's like about thinking outside the box and doing more things and being creative. But also, this quote makes me think of another lady that came into our lives and helped us out a lot. Her name is Rhonna Fair. So, one of the bloggers and people my wife met was a lady named Rhonna Fair. So at the time, okay, so Rhonna, she's kind of a big name in craft, women's craft, scrapbooking, and stuff like that. That industry. She lives in Orem. She's an artist. So at the time, she was making designs, little art things, quotes and stuff, and they were getting real popular kind of in certain circles. People would take her quotes and art things, designs, and add them to their Instagram photos. Problem was, how do you back then, jump through all sorts of hoops to get stuff onto your phone. But Rhonna had done something real clever. Does anyone here know what a dingbat font is? So a dingbat font file, you have all your letters A through Z, lowercase, all your letters uppercase. For each letter, the file has an image that represents that character, right? A dingbat font, say I don't want characters, I just want pictures. So the letter A might be the whole thing. So she had taken her designs and put them into a font file, and then you could use an app that lets you write text onto a photo. You just select her font, and then you can put her pictures in her. And our app, the BubbleFrame app, it would let you add text to photos. So my wife Holly, she saw, well, people are loving these things. So we're gonna make it easier to get Rhonna's designs into our app. So that's what we did. We just found ways to make it easier to get stuff in. Started working with her, and my wife is doing all this stuff with girls and quotes and stuff. They all came from Rhonna. Eventually we decided, hey, still way too many hoops to jump through to get these designs into the app. Let's just make an app, Rhonna Designs app. Make it easy. So started to happen. So we came out with this app. We were hoping for good things, but it kind of took off way faster than we thought it would. We were cautiously optimistic, I guess. So we submitted the app to the App Store. Many of you probably know that Apple has to review each app. It can take about a week. We submitted a few days later. Heard from Apple that feature the app. I'm all excited. Came out and they did feature it in New and Noteworthy, and the app just kind of started going crazy. People were sharing it on Instagram, and Apple had featured it. That always helps. We ended up made it as high as number 3 overall in the paid apps. A few weeks later, Apple featured it as their app of the week. It means you have to make it free, and so we're like, we were a little unsure whether we should be free, but fortunately we did. We got a lot more users, and it'll spread fast. By the end of the year, it was featured as one of the best of 2015. So, just things kind of took off from there. And eventually I was making more from this than my job, and so it kind of became a no-brainer. I need to just, that's, this is last year, Cook, who's the CEO of Apple. Happy face. So, that was exciting. We got invited by Apple to a conference in Salt Lake where Tim Cook was presenting. They wanted to find some Utah developers to spotlight how up there, but it was a lot of fun. And so, quote from Walt Disney: "I do not like to repeat successes. I like to go on to other things." Kind of where I am now, trying to keep it going, find the next. So now in 2017, we've done a lot since then. You can see there's 3 apps that Rhonna designs. Project Life is the one that Alan mentioned his wife uses. That's another company that I partnered with. Fortunately for me, all the attention we got from the other apps kind of kept me busy, kept people finding me, and so there's been plenty to do. Swipe Left is just an app that I made recently. We've done Android versions of Rhonna Designs and Project Life. We did a Windows version phone of Rhonna Designs. We've done some message sticker apps, and I've got about 3 apps working on now, new apps. And does anyone have any questions? Well, thank you for letting me come, and just want to open it up if anyone has any questions. Yeah.
Devin, you spent some time on talking about when the iPhone was first introduced, how that was a real game changer.
I have looked at cryptocurrencies. Actually, it's been around for like 7-8 years, but I just started looking at it a few months ago, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to compare to the smartphones as far as disruption, but I do think it's going to be a thing. It's going to. Just the whole notion of this distributed network where there's not one main server. Thing is, I think one thing that's different is it's kind of more hard to explain than just showing someone a cool device. It's hard to wrap your head around, but I think it is the future. I believe it is. I don't think it'll be as fast. Any other questions? Yeah. What? I'm sorry. Oh, porting from iOS to Android. Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm supposed to repeat the questions, I forgot. So the question was the differences between developing for iOS and Android, and what's it look like to try to port an app between one and the other. So yeah, it's kind of like starting. It's not starting over completely, but you know, if you got an app on iOS and want to do Android, it's a different environment, different programming language. You can't reuse the code. You can reuse the ideas and some of the logic, but you can't reuse the code. So it is a lot of work. They do have there are different frameworks where the idea is write it once and it works on both, and those work and don't work to varying degrees. I haven't really found one that I was too happy with. So far, there's one called React Native that's getting popular, and I've dabbled in it a little, but I research it. Were there any other questions, anyone? Yeah. Yeah, good question. So the question is, what are some of the upcoming apps? It's a little tricky because some of it I can't talk about yet. Some of them are with new partners, and there's VAs. With Rhonna Designs, we're always coming up with new stuff. They're amazing people. They're great people. So you know, just love working with them. So we're kind of always doing new stuff with them. But I kind of let her announce things. So, but you know, I like to do stuff in the photo and video space. I have one that I'm working on that's more of a project management type thing. I have one that's more of a reminder type thing. But about all I can say about those. Yeah. Okay, so the question is how much research goes into each project, or how many hours? I mean, the real answer is it kind of varies. Yeah, and it also varies with the client or the part. Sometimes I work with partners. Sometimes it's what I call a client, where they're paying me by the hour. A lot of times they come and they have it all mapped out. They know what they want. Other times it's just they have an idea. And so in those cases it's more work, because I've got to take their idea and make it into a product. Right? And so it can be, I mean, you ask how many hours. You know, it might be 5 hours, it might be 10, it might be 20. And a lot of times you're investigating what the technologies are that are out there. This thing that they want to do, can you even do it? And then how would you do it? And what are the trade-offs between different ways of doing it? So yeah, I mean, I guess the answer is it varies project to project, but really 5 to 10. Any other questions? Oh. Okay, so the question is, how long did each of these apps take? Yeah, I don't have a great memory for time, but you know, Mommy probably took 4 or 5 months, I think, and BubbleFrame probably took about the same, about 5 months. Interestingly, the one that took off, the Rhonna Designs, I think it took about 3 months, maybe 3.5 months. And part of that was a lot of this code in BubbleFrame could reuse in Rhonna designs. There was some similar things. And so it was kind of a no-brainer to make that app because I already had a lot of the stuff there. And you never know what's going to take off, I guess. Us. So we ended up, now Rhonna Collage. We ended up pulling it into the Rhonna designs. So yeah, it still exists. Rhonna Collage.
We're out of time. However, afterward, if any of you have, I know there are some students with questions. You're welcome to come up and just visit with him for a minute. But let's hear it from Mr. Devin Pitcher.